So I know a guy named Justin Goodbread, and he's a financial advisor here in my town. He runs a company called Heritage Investors, and he also runs a website where he blogs about financial matters. If I remember correctly, the blog site is Simply Financial, or I'll put it in the show notes. Anyways, he runs a company called Heritage Investors. He's a really smart investor, great guy. My family even does some personal business with him. And just recently, Justin released his first book that I'm aware of called The Ultimate Sell. And if you're watching the video, I've got a copy of it. I'm showing to you right here. Yours truly was actually quoted in that book. I had been interviewed for Justin's podcast that he does. And he used pieces of that interview to talk about how to get loans for a business. Because sometimes you need loans to grow a business if you're going to scale. And so reading through Justin's book, The Ultimate Sale, talking about building a company to be ready to be sold and the statistics behind that and the strategies you can use to be ready to sell, got me also thinking about the idea of building a business where it makes it easier to get loans in the first place, right? So if you need capital for your business, particularly loans where you're going to go to lenders and get capital, how do you build a business where it's going to be easier to get access to that capital in the first place? And so I want to share just 3 different things with you today that we'll talk about how you can do that, how you can build a business as you're building it so that it's ready to get loans and make the process of getting a loan from a lender a lot easier. So the first thing I want to share with you is just a reminder that small business loans are really all about paying back that loan. That's why a lender makes a loan. You know, investors make their money back when you have an exit of some sort. So they invest money in your business in exchange for equity in the business, and they don't get paid back regularly. They get paid back when there's one big exit. And so lenders do things differently. Lenders are much more focused on that regular recurring monthly payback that you're going to be able to provide them. And so they're not looking for an exit. They're just looking for that loan to be paid out over 3, 5, sometimes 10 years or longer if it's real estate based. So what I'm really talking about here is you should build your business and your model such that it shows you have the ability to pay back that loan. And what I'm talking about is a ratio that lenders use. I've talked about it before in some of my courses, called a debt service coverage ratio, or DSCR. And all that is, it's a fancy term, but really all it does is it takes all income sources, so the income coming off of the business, maybe outside income sources. So if you still have a day job and you're starting a business, do you have income coming from that day job? Do you have investments that are putting off dividends and those types of things? It takes all income sources, and then it compares that income against all of your expenses. So now, since we're talking about all income from the business and yourself personally and any other founders of the business, typically that own 20 or more percent, we're looking at all their expenses. So the expenses from the business, your personal expenses. So they're going to take a look at if you have car payments, and they're going to factor all this in together. And they're going to come up with that ratio, that DSCR, that debt service coverage ratio. And the ratio should typically be north of a 1.25x. And what that means is you can show $1.25 of income from all those sources compared to just $1 of expenses. And the reason there's a buffer there is because, well, so you'll have a buffer if you hit hard times. Now that ratio also takes into account if you, the loan itself, the loan that you're asking for. So again, they're going to take all income, going to back out all expenses, and then they're going to add in to those expenses the proposed loan payment. So if you're buying real estate, they'll take the payment for the loan off that. If you're buying, equipment, they'll take that number. And so remember that your proposed loan payment goes into that equation. So that 1.25x, that minimum threshold, is going to matter. So as you're building your business, you want to be thinking about the fact of think ahead. So a lot of people end up just going through, the regular business cycles, and they don't contemplate if they're going to need loans down the road. They just think about the here and now. And if you anticipate needing loans ever in the future, you're going to want to build your business in such a way that it makes it easier to get that loan. And the first step to do that is to build the business so that you can show that 1.25x for that debt service coverage ratio. That kind of ties into the second point I want to make, which is your accountant's role in getting a small business loan. Your accountant's role isn't just to provide the lender the documents that they're asking for, profit and loss statements, balance sheet, cash flow, all these different things. That's really not what I'm talking about with your accountant. That's certainly a role they can play. But what I want to talk about with the accountant is similar to what we just talked about with the debt service coverage ratio. So what I oftentimes see with borrowers when they apply for loans is they have and I'm kind of smiling here, you can't see it for the podcast, but I'm smiling. They have so aggressively, quote unquote, managed their tax liability. What I'm really joking about here is they've worked with their accountant and they've taken so many deductions, or as many deductions as they can, so that they don't end up paying a lot of taxes. And I understand that practice, but that can hurt you when you're applying for a loan. So the way a lender knows you can pay them back and calculates that debt service coverage ratio is by looking at 2 to 3 years of your past tax returns. Well, guys, if you're managing your tax liability so aggressively that you're showing losses, pretty big losses in some instances I've seen, then that doesn't prove to a lender you can pay them back. Now, what the owners will usually say is, oh, come on, I did that just to keep my taxes low. Let me provide you a profit and loss statement that shows a different picture. Well, guys, that's misleading. And I don't recommend that. That's lying to the IRS, and I really don't recommend that. So if you want to make it easier as your business grows and you're building this business to get a business loan, work with your accountant to be strategically planning ahead. It's okay to manage your tax liability and take the appropriate deductions that you're allowed to take, but don't do it so aggressively that by the time you need a loan and you apply for a lender, you've got to turn in multiple years of tax returns to them where it's just showing this enormous loss. That's really just going to hurt your chances for proving the ability to pay them back. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the role that your business credit plays in being prepared to get a business loan. So you can probably quickly understand how your personal credit may play a role. But what a lot of people don't seem to understand is you have a business credit as well. That business credit is often tracked through companies like the SBFE, the Small Business Financial Exchange. And what they do is they don't just track companies that you have received loans from. So if you think to yourself, well, I haven't had any loans at all, so I don't have any business credit, that may or may not be true. If you have suppliers that are providing you products or services, and then they're giving you, say, 30 or 60-day terms to pay their invoice, that is most likely being reported to your business credit or things like your SBFE. So it's important to manage your business credit so that when you go to get a loan, you'll really have a good, strong business credit. Just like with a personal credit, one great thing to do is just start out small. A lot of times financial advisors will recommend for your kids when they turn 18 to get them maybe a prepaid credit card or something like that, or a small limit credit card so they can go ahead and start building their own credit. Well, your business can work the same way. So one of the things you can do is if you don't need big loans yet for equipment or real estate or working capital and all these things, just go get yourself a small business credit card. I have one for my business through Capital One. I have a Spark card that I use. And so my business, even though I don't need loans for what I do, my business does already have a business credit score. Build that up just like you would your personal credit when you're going to go for personal loans. And that way you will be more prepared to be able to get a loan in the future. So just to wrap up, the idea here is that as you're going through your business and its growth, take the time to think about if you're going to need access to capital in the future. Don't wait until the moment that you're going to need it to apply for it. Plan ahead for that, and then make some smart choices so that your business will be in a position where it's a lot easier for you to borrow money in the first place. I hope that helps. Until next time I talk to you, I hope you find your voice and find funding. See you later. Thanks.